Hey everybody, thanks for tuning in to episode 6 of my What to Do in Speedrun series, where I discuss the expectations of every class in the dungeon and fractal speedrun environment. The general goal here is to explain to newcomers to a class what the expectations for them are, so that they contribute to the party's success optimally and fulfill their role. Today I am discussing the Engineer, which was formerly somewhat of an outcast in the dungeon speedrun community. But after the FGS nerf, the popularity of the Engineer is beginning to rise as more and more players are taking an interest in the class and unlocking their potential. To keep it somewhat short, Engineers are a high DPS class that also has pretty insanely high utility capabilities to offer. They are a true jack-of-all-trades class, and as a result, it can be difficult to know what your exact role is in a group and what the expectations are, because the expectations and the role will vary from group to group. So let's get into it. The average Pug player out there believes that Engineers have low DPS. Maybe because all the bad Engineers out there in Pugs are auto-attacking with a pistol or a flamethrower, and so they actually do have low DPS. But much like the Elementalist, unlocking the DPS potential of the Engineer requires mastering the DPS rotations, which are like playing Guitar Hero on Expert, involving weapon skills, kit skills, tool belt skills, etc. Managing the cooldowns and high APM button presses is a challenge, and at the same time as you're managing all that, you need to be able to survive in melee with glass cannon gear. Playing the Engineer in a speedrun group is hard, and playing it perfectly is nearly impossible. But like I said in my LE video, practice makes better. There's no substitute for hours of practice and committing the different keystrokes for the Engineer to muscle memory. This is a much harder road than Warrior or Thief, but I will say that certain players are definitely attracted to a high skill cap, high APM class, and those are the players who should be playing Engineer. I've said a lot to essentially get to the basic point here. People in speedruns expect an Engineer to pull his weight in DPS, and that involves good DPS rotations. If you want to refer to my Engineer guide elsewhere on my channel, I do discuss the basic DPS rotation for the Engie. So if you have any questions about that, please check out that video. So the second important skill for the Engineer is to know how the other professions operate. The Engineer is a jack-of-all-trade profession. In the absence of an Elementalist or a Phalanx Warrior, Engineers can stack might for the party. They have a lot of blast finishers, they have access to fire fields, they can sort of take on that role. When there's no Thief in the party, they can grant stealth to everyone for trash runs. They have an elixir that grants stealth, which they can do on the run, and they have a smoke field that can be blasted for stealth as well. When a fight starts going poorly, they have easy access to a water field and blast finishers, which is also paired with condition removal. Engineers even have a bit of projectile defense, and they have, depending on what skills they use, really good or even great CC capability. As an Engineer, you're expected to know what your party composition is, what skills that the party composition has, and also, more importantly, what the party lacks. Your job is to look at what a party doesn't have and fill in the blanks to make sure that whatever resource your team comp cannot produce, you do it. If you have two Elementalists in the group, you don't need to spend effort, time, or utility slots on might stacking. If you have a Thief, you shouldn't be asked to stealth. So know what you have in your group, know what you don't have, and it's your job to be the missing piece of the puzzle. The Engineer in PvE typically uses 3 kits for most encounters to maximize DPS. However, an Engineer is expected to know when and how to go outside the norm for utility purposes. If you need projectile defense, you should know to bring Elixir U and that it's available on your tool belt to summon a wall of reflect or smokescreen. If you're going to do a long trash run and you're worried about falling behind everyone else, be sure to bring rocket boots. Literally every Engineer's utility skill is good for something. A more experienced Engineer player than myself could definitely go through each utility skill and give you a particular dungeon encounter where that skill is awesome. Each skill, there's a lot of niche uses for many of these skills, but you could spend hours going through and saying, so utility goggles are really good at this one particular instance, and that's where you should use them. And that would be the subject matter for someone who's a bit more experienced running NG than myself. But suffice to say that in a profession with so much potential utility, you are expected to be creative and come up with outside-the-box solutions to the dungeon encounters. As I mentioned, engineers can make reflects, they have condition removal, they even have access to stability, stealth, CC, pulls, blast finishers, immobilizes, and so on. It's kind of a bad pun, but engineers literally do have an entire toolbox at their disposal, and a good engineer is expected to know which tools to use and when. So that's really it for engineer. It is a class that is insanely complicated to use, and it's kind of funny that this video is so short, being how complicated the engineer is. I think it's one of those things where it's just easy to say, harder to do. But thank you guys again for watching. If you have any questions or tips to share, please hit up the comments. Have a great day, guys.